How to get creativity and innovation into the boardroom. As a board reviewer, I meet many directors with positive intentions. They want to leverage the experience they gained throughout their careers. They want to support executives. They want to talk about the big picture in the boardroom. And yet, many quickly get disillusioned. They get stuck in detail, ticking off boxes and agenda items. What can directors do to spot people with big ideas? How can they support them? What does a boardroom look like of an organization where people can develop ideas, innovate and thrive? A warm welcome to the Better Boards podcast series. I'm Dr. Sabina Demkowski, founder and managing partner of Better Boards. We make the boards of the most ambitious organizations more effective. Our mission at Better Boards is to contribute to creating better boards. We do this by providing an evidence-based approach to board evaluations and development programs. Our innovative ISO-certified digital board evaluation platform empowers our clients and professional service partners to increase the performance and effectiveness of governing and managing boards. My podcast partner is Sir John Tusa. He's very well known to the British public as the main presenter of BBC Two's Newsnight programme. He was a managing director of some of the most iconic media and cultural centres in the United Kingdom and is the chair and co-chair of many well-known boards. In his latest book, Bright Sparks: How Creativity and Innovation Can Inspire Business Success, he's studying case studies of creative, innovative ideas, how they succeeded against the odds, and the role boards played in the process. Sir John, welcome back to the Better Boards podcast series, and thank you so much for contributing.
Very good to be here.
It's always fantastic to have you. It really is. So John, let's jump straight in. When I speak with directors, I hear so much how they would like to contribute and leverage what they learned throughout their careers. But soon and all too often, they feel suffocated by regulatory requirements, by working through agenda items, by being stuck in detail rather than talking about the big picture, the breakthrough ideas that could make all the difference. Now, you studied people and boards who succeeded with big, bold ideas against all adversaries. What did you learn?
Well, I learned that if a board is too formal, if it's too committed just to observing the rules, then it's probably not a very creative board. Of course, you don't break the rules, naturally, but you then have to find room, which I don't think is that difficult, to say, what are the ideas? How do we innovate? Particularly, how do we, as the supervisory board, support the executive when they are trying to be innovative and creative, assuming that they are? And that boards which just get stuck in minutes and reviews of whether they are doing everything right are not good boards. You have to have ideas. The regulation, you can almost take the regulation for granted. And then you say, why are we here? And we are here to make the organization, help to make the organization a better, more creative place. And tragically, people just seem to be frightened of doing this. And I can't think why.
I very often hear that the balance tipped towards these regulatory issues, and there isn't enough time. Everyone tells me we don't have enough time to talk about these big ideas. What's your answer?
The answer is that if a board doesn't make time, after all, the board can run its own business. The chair and the board run their own business. If they choose to be bogged down, then that is a tragedy, but it is entirely their decision. But I invite them to ask themselves, any board to ask itself, are you more interested in responsibility, where you take responsibility, or are you interested in accountability? And the point about accountability, it seems to me, is you spend your whole time saying, yes, we've done this. Yes, we've done this. Yes, we've done this. And then you are being accountable to somebody outside you, whereas responsibility says we are going to take decisions. If we get them wrong, we pay the price. No argument about that. But we are going to accept responsibility, have ideas. We're not going to spend our whole time demonstrating what good boys and girls we are by being accountable. I think the practice of constant accountability prevents people from having ideas, and far better to say, I'm responsible for good or bad, and if I mess it up, get rid of me. I think it's a fundamental divide in outlook on boards.
So now you studied some people with big ideas, they succeeded, and they all worked with a board. So maybe tell us a little bit about the commonalities between the cases you studied.
The cases I studied were mainly in arts, culture, and the media, but beyond that, they ranged from the man who created a Shakespeare theatre in Gdansk in Poland on the Baltic, to Rory Stewart, whom everybody will know, who set up a foundation to rebuild the last historic quarter of Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan, and who also revived the Afghan creative arts sector, and a woman who created the European Union Youth Orchestra. And nobody asked her to do it. In fact, everybody said that it shouldn't be done and she couldn't do it. But they did it. And the point is, each one of these people, and there are others, had one great idea and said, I will now do it. But at a certain stage, once they had started, they all were smart enough to say, I need a board to help me make this organization work in the long run. Each one of them, as it happened, then had very good boards who balanced an understanding of the organization and how much risk had to be taken with how much support had to be given. So the boards were absolutely vital. In one case, in the EUIO's case, vital in actually keeping it going against EU regulations. They were vital in preserving the original idea of the innovator.
So how does this happen? Let's maybe start with the people themselves. What did you learn? What are the characteristics of people who take an idea and make it happen?
They are great individualists, naturally. They are very stubborn. One of the things is they are all egoists. And you might think that an egoist was not a good thing to be if you are running an organization. But they combined being egoist with a very strong idea of how extraordinary and good they were with selflessness. And they devoted their egoism to the development of the organization which they believed in. Then there are a couple of other things. Of course, they had the vision, create a European Union Youth Orchestra, restore old Kabul, but they're incredibly practical. Rory Stewart spent his time in Kabul, more or less walking up and down old rubbish heaps and saying, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And so that business of practicality, Joy Breyer, who founded the European Union Youth Orchestra, was devoted to every single detail of getting the right players, the right conductors, the right music, the right support. So vision and practicality, enormous determination and great patience. It took Rory Stewart 6 years to work in Kabul. It took Jerzy Limon 15 years in Gdansk to build the theatre. It took Joy Breyer about 10 years. So these people are extraordinary because they have what you might call all the short-term instincts, but also the long-term capacity. And one of the other things is they were incredibly loyal to their staff. My goodness, their staff and their colleagues were loyal to them. So you have to be both things.
First thing is, I'm absolutely sure that such people exist far beyond your case studies, of course. They exist in every organization. So how can boards make sure that they spot such people and such talent amongst the executives and don't suffocate them, don't stop them?
I think large organizations have very bad habits. A friend of mine, when I was talking about this very point, about why doesn't this quality of innovation spring from within large organizations, and she said, well, look, a large organization will say, yes, we must be more creative. Let's be more creative. So what do? They set up a creative hub within the organization. And once it's determined by being in the organization, it's almost guaranteed not to succeed. So for a large, stable, existing organization to say, and now we are really going to have part of our organization where none of our rules apply because we need to have ideas to appear. I grant this is risky, but the consequence is if you won't take this risk, you will never get the ideas. So I would suggest that this business of how do you allow real innovation and risk-taking is still unfinished business in totally organized institutions. It's waiting to be done properly. And you don't do it by saying, here you are, here's a bit of the organization, be creative. No, that's not how it works.
Now, probably a lot of our listeners work in such organizations. What are the first steps they could take to still make it happen? Because we need to make it happen. I mean, let's face it, change is absolutely necessary. Without ideas and creativity, innovation, large organizations will fall behind.
Well, organizations will always buy up ideas from outside, and that's perfectly reasonable. And maybe that is the way it has to happen. The big organizations are just extremely bad by their nature in permitting, tolerating, never mind encouraging real innovation. How do people get on in organizations? They get on in organizations by doing what the organization expects. Whereas what you want is somebody who says, look, here's an idea, and you've never thought of this, and it's not how we behave, but this is going to be a big idea. So it may be that what organizations have to do is not so much worry about whether they're capable of creating innovation, because I suspect that they're not, but they just have to be very, very aware of what's going on in the outside world, respond to that, probably buy up the ideas, and then say we must be very careful not to kill these ideas when they come into our organization. So, in other words, there's no management way of saying, be creative. Let us now create an outfit which is creative. That's not how it works. But there's an attitude of mind which says, I'm ready to be original. I'm ready to be surprised, and I want people who will surprise me.
So how can we get that mindset into the boardrooms?
I just wish that all boardrooms started with the idea that the regulation and the normal of business was done quickly. It was probably done in the first half hour of a meeting. And that by definition, they discussed ideas and big ideas. And even if they didn't reach a conclusion, after all, no board meeting needs to reach a conclusion, and they usually don't. But you just have to be much more open-minded. And I think that board members need to remind themselves they're not there because they have a particular skill. That may be important. That may be why they've been put on the board. The reason they're there is because they are a whole person with a full range of ideas. So they're not tied down by being a broadcaster, an accountant, an engineer, or whatever it is. They are there because they are people with ideas, and the chair and the chief exec have got to allow that to happen. Incidentally, it's much more fun. Why do people hate being on so many boards and say it is very boring? Because it is boring. They are not allowed to have ideas. So, and everybody on a board is equal, incidentally. One of my best board members on the University of the Arts London was the artist Grayson Perry. People said, why are you having Grayson Perry, Sir Grayson now, on your board? I said, because he has fantastic common sense, and he will ask questions which nobody else does, and he did. So you need more of that attitude of mind. So what I'm saying is, stop being worried about the Charity Commission. You're probably not breaking the rules anyway, and the Charity Commission aren't stupid. But do think about how you create a free atmosphere. And I think this would show not only in the board, but in the relations with the executive, and actually would more interestingly define what the institution, what the organization was. People would say, we're an organization of ideas. We're allowed to do things. I mean, look at the BBC. It spent its whole time on compliance. What it's about, it's about journalism. It's not about compliance. You should take the compliance as being read. And that is what I think is missing. And it seems to me you need to give yourself permission on a board not to be tied down by rules. It's as simple as that. Nobody is making you be tied down by rules. You are.
Now, you're not only a board member, you are chairing numerous boards. What's a message for the chair you can give?
You're not the only person with ideas. In fact, it's your job to harness the ideas. It's certainly your job to stay very close to the chief exec. And I always had a rule, a practice with my Vice-Chancellor at the University of the Arts, London. I said to him, the basis on which we work is that you, the Vice-Chancellor, will always hear it from me first. Nobody else will know what I am thinking, and when I am thinking something, I will tell you first, and I won't gossip. And he said it's exactly the same with me, and it worked wonderfully for 7 to 8 years. Now, if things had gone wrong, then we would have dealt with it, but that would not have been because we didn't lack confidence in one another. And this transmitted itself to the board, and the board knew that you played fair and you played openly. And as a result, the board was open, and we could say things to one another which were in the interests of the organisation. It needs to be fun. Somebody said it's very important that boards should actually spend time together. I was on an American board for some time, and they were very good at having time together. Didn't altogether make a perfect board, but it made it a much better board. And certainly on the University of the Arts, where we had a fair amount of social interaction. And that is also part of knowing other board members and knowing them as individuals, as experts, as people with ideas.
We drive home a very similar message, and it comes back again to the willingness also to spend time together, not only in the boardroom, but also a little bit outside the boardroom, so that you have a chance to really get to know each other.
Yes, because that's the basis on which you build up trust. You don't build up trust by coming in saying that you read all the minutes, you've read all the regulations, you're happy that you meet the Charity Commissioner's demands and rules and regulations. In the end, of course it's about that. But once you've got that out of the way, you take that as read. Boards are human institutions. It's how people behave. And it always amazes me, why do people behave in such a boring way on boards? You can't bring the best of yourself to any organisation if you are being boring and you're feeling, well, I don't have the opportunity to say what I really think. And anyway, that's rule one. Is a board interesting? Is it enjoyable? Of course it's responsible. Of course it's responsible. That's not the point. But if it isn't the other things, it will never be a good board, and I believe will never produce or allow creativity and innovation.
Fantastic. I think you speak what so many directors feel and would like to see. Now, how can an individual non-executive director or a trustee contribute to creating such an atmosphere? Because everyone is just looking at the chair, and if the chair isn't doing this, they feel they can't. But are they really so helpless? Or should they feel so helpless?
I think it's very difficult if the chair does not give a lead, but then you do have to go to the chair and say, look, you asked me to come on this board because of this and that and the other. I don't feel that I am able to give you and the organisation the best that I can, because I don't think that the atmosphere and the opportunity for the best of my contribution and my colleague's contribution is allowed by the way we are running the board. I think in the end, again, it's a human thing. You have to go to the chair and say, I can't contribute as I want to contribute under these very, very strict circumstances of this is all you can say and this is how you say it and these are the subjects we discuss. It's the things that surprise and that are not on the agenda that are the really, really valuable ones. You know, man is born free, and everywhere she then takes up the chains. And I think boards are like that. They ought to be free, and then they self-impose restrictions and chains. And I just pray, because I hear time and time again people saying how awful the boards they're on are. Please, 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 it's a human organisation, it's a fun organisation, it's an important organisation, and you won't do it just by being stuck in the mud and saying, we're observing the rules. Whoever got anywhere just by observing the rules. You don't break the rules, but you have to go beyond them.
Very encouraging messages. Sadly, we have to come to an end. What are the 3 things our listeners should take away from this podcast?
Well, I would say that remind yourself that a board is there to help create and sustain vision. Of course, the vision comes from the chief executive, but The board has to be interested in that, and the board contribute to that. The board has to be forward-looking. Of course, it's supervisory, but is it sufficiently forward-looking? Question number one. Secondly, does everybody contribute equally? Are they allowed to contribute equally? Thirdly, is the organization going forward, or is it stuck and just saying, do you know, it's wonderful, we have all our objectives, and every year we meet our objectives, and nothing very much happens? You have to be very careful how you deal with objectives. People think that just because they've observed the objective, something is being done. That's very seldom the case. And the man who founded objectives said you need a handful of key objectives, and if one of them isn't working, it's probably the wrong one, so change it. People make a ball and chain out of objectives. So that's all part of free yourself up. It is in your hands, and there's no point in joining an organization if you don't take that freedom.
Sir John, a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you, Sabine.
clarity and encouragement. Thank you so much for contributing.
Thank you very much. Throw off your chains. Thank you.
We give a voice to all who care about creating better boards. This is the essence of our podcast series, and we look forward to sharing our journey with you. Get in touch if you want to learn more about our work, see a demo of our platform, or contribute to the podcast. On our website www.better-boards.com, you can see my calendar and book a Teams call. Thank you for listening.